Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever in the world you are. Welcome to this program. Tonight, I would like to discuss the pending drought in not only Zimbabwe, in Southern Africa, and most of African, actually, most of Central Africa and Southern Africa are going to be affected by a drought this coming year. This is just a picture of a field in somewhere in Zimbabwe. The drought has already hit. The maize is dried up. There isn't even enough for the cattle to come and graze on it. The tragedy of Zimbabwe, of course, is that this is a country that used to be the breadbasket of Southern Africa during the white colonial rule. And that situation prevailed after independence because the white farmers and the agricultural sector in general was allowed to continue. And then the year 2000, things changed. There was the infamous land redistribution, and white farms mostly were seized, and they were given mostly to ZANU-PF loyalists. And the Zimbabwe's agricultural sector completely collapsed, and with it, the economy. And the country that used to be the breadbasket of the Southern African region started relying on food aid, imported food, every 2 or 3 years. Welcome to the program, Benjamin. What do you have to say about the coming drought?
Thank you for having me on the program, and to our viewers, thank you for joining. It's a sad development, really, because I know a lot of people in Zimbabwe, they just love farming. Let me say, they just love having a field, no matter how small it is. Maybe it's not to sell, but maybe just to have, especially for maize, a cob or two, while at least you are talking stories in the evening or having your tea is what we are accustomed to. And now that we have, actually we have been having a series of droughts. It's pretty sad. I know a lot of people are devastated. Some have tried, different means just to try and save the crop. But it is what it is. I mean, there's nothing much you can do. Also, this is also where some people actually, get their livelihood by selling, agricultural products. And now with this year drought, it's going to make life even more difficult if you rely on agricultural produce to finance your projects or your family or just to feed your family. So I think it's very, very sad.
Well, the acts of nature cannot be avoided. I think that is one thing we can all accept. We did have droughts during the white colonial rule and the first 10 years of our independence, or 20 years of our independence, from 1980 to the year 2000. And yet we still maintained our position as the breadbasket of the region. In fact, not only the breadbasket, Zimbabwe produced enough crops to feed its own people, but also for export. We exported a lot of tobacco, quality tobacco. We competed, we were one of the top 5 nations in the world in selling quality tobacco, earning us billions of dollars in foreign currency. We also sold flowers and so forth. This changed in 2000 when ZANU-PF seized the farms. Now a country that was a breadbasket now found itself again and again vulnerable. Yes, the drought is natural. But as long as when you have a good year, you produce enough to fill your silos and some for export, you're okay. The problem we have got now is that this drought, for instance, is hitting us at a time when we've been importing grain. That means last year, although we didn't have a drought, we still didn't produce enough to feed our own people. So we were importing. And now you've got a serious drought, a countrywide drought. And your silos are empty. That is what is making this situation particularly depressing. They're starting from zero.
Yes, I agree with you. During when we had the white farmers, we were more of commercial farming. Then when we removed them or we took them out of the picture, I think we went back to subsistence farming, and years later, we still have not moved from that position to sustain ourselves. Hence, you find we are still importing. Years after the whole land saga. So then you tend to ask the question now: what did it actually pay out, or it was a mistake, or is it that we have not yet learned the trade? And there's so many questions that one could ask, but then we're not going to go deep into it. I think it's also about learning how this whole process is supposed to be done, such that we can be self-sufficient, and not just learning, but also providing the resources to teach people, and the inputs as well. And Zimbabwe does not experience so much water, the rainfall. So I think we also need to have a plan B, to say when we have such droughts, we can have sources where we can irrigate. Those are some of the questions that need us to look into, or some of the solutions that we need to look into, basically.
Well, I'll just play this video of that has been taking the rounds on social media. This is President Emerson Mnangagwa. This is a video taken very recently of President Emerson Mnangagwa supposedly commissioning new tractors that had just been delivered. He couldn't even get the tractor started. The irony is, these are some of the equipment that the regime has been importing, particularly from countries like Russia and some of the Eastern Bloc countries. Cheap stuff, and the nation would find probably paid an arm and a leg for this because of corruption. The individual who is supplying it, they get a cut. The government official responsible for selling it gets a cut. And the minister himself gets a cut. So by the time you have paid for the equipment, everybody knows this guy who is supplying it, he doesn't have to supply anything of quality as long as he pays all these other people who want a cut. And so at the end of the day, you pay dearly for substandard equipment. If you can't even start the tractor when it's new, what more when it's old? I mean, this is the irony of, this is the tragedy rather of Zimbabwe.
Yeah, I do agree with you to say, if it's new and it's a battle, an uphill task just to get it to move, it surely will be will be so much stressful, especially when it's done its years. You cannot get a salvage value or a book value for it in 2 or 3 years. So bringing me to my point, what I would want to say is, we have been buying some of these equipment, I think, almost every year towards the rainy season. You always hear they're commissioning that, they're commissioning this. What happens to them every year? We don't see them. I don't know. Long time ago, from what I know, you had the rural councils. This is where you could go and you would hire, and they would come and they would service your lands, for a fee, of course. But it would do for, it would service for all the locals, within the vicinity. I don't know why they changed that. Now it seems as if once they are commissioned like this, they are given to the top brass. These are the same people that were given the previous year, and I don't know whether they are running them down or they're actually just selling them. I don't know, because we never see them. Mugabe used to buy as well, but you don't see them. It's just something that we should also be surprised at.
Well, these are some of the equipment supplied as part of this command agriculture. In this particular case, if you were the farm owner, of course, you would not want to spend a fortune buying a piece of kit like that, which is unreliable. Clearly, this would be meant for, like you said, rural councils, where they'll be told, oh, you're supposed to hire them out to plow fields for people and so forth. And generally, they're owned by government or local authority. And they never work. This is not only common in the agricultural sector. Remember, there was this story of the Minister of Roads importing snow plows, which when it should have been importing graders for the roads. And you can tell why that happened. Again, it's because of corruption. The spec for a proper road grader is known, but because they're buying it through the back door and they're being bribed, several people are getting their cut. You accept a quotation to supply a grader that is substandard, but you don't care because you're getting your cut. There is no meaningful competition to supply equipment like that because of corruption. This is what has killed the country. The commercial farmers, who were the whites mostly, who were booted off the farms, those farms were given either to some of these collective people or taken over by government officials themselves, who get this command agriculture money to buy various equipment, to buy seed, to buy this, to buy that, and they don't even have to account for it. And that is what has killed Zimbabwe's agricultural sector. Not only agricultural sector, the whole economy. Corruption has been at the heart of our Zimbabwe's economic collapse. And when you look at something like this, that's when you realize how serious that problem is. This tractor, I believe, would have been imported. And here we are. On the day they're supposed to be handed over, he can't even start it. Even the car mechanic sitting next to him, he can't start it either. And yet, the country would have paid a fortune for this equipment. It's really tragic. This is the story of Zimbabwe. That's why we are in this mess.
Yes, I agree with you there. I must say that, this is the biggest problem that we face, that every year when they do all these commissionings and, agricultural input schemes, there's so much corruption in it that most of the equipment and the inputs are untraceable to find out what happened to them. Did they reach the intended targets? But then at the end of the day, a few arrests happen, or somebody just gets fired, and then that's the end of it. There's no follow-up to say, what did happen. At the end of the day, these things belong to the people, because these things are bought by taxpayers' monies. And when you are buying something using somebody's money, I think you need to buy good value. Surely if everybody, I'm sure it must have been a very embarrassing moment for him, the president, as well as whoever was present, to see that on such an occasion, it just decides, no, this is not the right, this is not the environment that I'm used to, and it saves its energy. So it's sad. I mean, this is what you should expect when you go buying, let me say, fake things, the cheap stuff, because you've pocketed most of the money. Had it been, I mean, there are proper tractors out there, that last, or that I used to know the types of tractors that were there that would last, the John Deere's, the Massey Fergusons. Those were tried and tested. I mean, if there was nothing wrong with them, why scrap them? And I'm sure now they have even better quality than what they had before. But then with these ones that they are buying, Ah, man, it's a sad story, and it just adds to the wars that we are facing right now.
Thank you very much, Benjamin, and thank you very much, the listeners out there, for joining us tonight. The tragedy is that this drought is going to find many people without enough food, and usually these the animals that start to die, and then many people will be malnourished to the point where some people even die. And let's hope that we'll never get to that point. But it is a hopeless situation that a country that, by all accounts, should be the bread basket of the region is now finding itself in this tragic situation. But as long as we have got a corrupt and tyrannical regime, honestly, I don't see anything changing. The abuse of resources, buying useless equipment like this tractor here, will continue as long as we have got a regime that rigs elections and is not accountable to the people. Thank you very much again, and thank you very much again, Benjamin, for joining tonight.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to our viewers for joining us. Good night.
Good night.